A tweet storm, an ISI agent, a member of the parliament. What do they all have in common?
Sunanda Pushkar.
Sunanda Pushkar.
Sunanda Pushkar.
Sunanda Pushkar is dead.
A mysterious death, one that captured the nation's attention, one that continues to baffle politicians and the police alike. Something happened inside a hotel room in Delhi on 17th January 2014 that sparked a witch hunt. Conspiracies of assassinations and poisonings loomed large over the five-star Leela Hotel. No one fully knows what happened in Suite 345. This is the story of that day and what happened leading up to it. This is the story of Sunanda Pushkar and Shashi Tharoor. Hi everyone, welcome to the Desi Crime Podcast, the show where we dive deep into some of the craziest stories from around South Asia. I'm your host Aryaan.
And I'm Aishwarya.
And the case that I have for you today is one that baffles not just Delhi, but the whole of India to this day. Aishwarya, almost a year ago, we shot this episode, its intro and a lot of the investigative work we did from the very same Leela Hotel where this case went down in Delhi.
And we never got down to releasing it. I kept bugging Aryaan on every recording. I'm like, where is that episode? Where is that episode?
Here it is. One of the most requested cases, Shashi Tharoor and Sunanda Pushkar's case. And we have some good news for you amidst all of this, that our book, the Desi Crime book, is out now and you can go and buy it. It has many stories like this and more that cover the craziness of crime in South Asia. Aishwarya, when authorities walked into room 345 at the Leela that we're in right now, they were of course jolted because they knew that the case on their hand was one of significant priority. It was Shashi Tharoor, one of Congress's most famous politicians. His wife that was probably unconscious, if not dead. But when they walked in, the scene was eerier than just that of a VIP's wife. Sneaking into five-star hotels and spending a night to get you the money shots costs a little bit of money, So to support our channel, you can become a member for just 200 rupees or a patron on Patreon, and you will get early access to our episodes and other perks. And if you're broke, young students, then hit the subscribe button. That's free. Also, I'd like to thank Sunanda Mehta for her book, The Extraordinary Life and Death of Sunanda Pushkar, as an invaluable resource while researching this case. Now, on with the episode. Twitter was in full throttle on 15th January 2014, a Wednesday. Bullets were being fired across the border. Two prominent individuals were at each other's throat, one Indian, one Pakistani. These were metaphorical bullets. Two women had found themselves in the crosshairs of a Twitter war, a tweet storm. The individuals in question were Sunanda Pushkar and Meher Tarar. Sunanda was a famous socialite and wife of MP Shashi Tharoor. Meher, on the other hand, was an established Pakistani journalist who reported on world politics. What had them fighting was a man, Sunanda's very husband, the charming, astute and eloquent Shashi Tharoor. Apart from being a top brass leader of the Indian National Congress, the ruling party at the time, Tharoor was a renowned Twitterati, as in someone who had a large Twitter following.
And no wonder that the sun never set on the British Empire, because even God couldn't trust the English in the dark.
In fact, the very reason I joined Twitter, at Aryaan Misra, was because Shashi Tharoor tweeted about me when I was in high school. A giddy teenage Aryaan joined Twitter just to thank one of his oratory heroes. It was cringe and cute in equal parts.
Aryaan, so I'm pretty sure you've mentioned this during the course of this podcast at some point, that you've met Shashi Tharoor, he tweeted about you.
Whatever. Big deal.
But in the realm of this case, what was he like in person? Is he like what we see? I don't know how long your interaction with him was and how much you guys got down to discussing, but what is he like?
Okay, so I'm not trying to be braggy. He is one of my heroes, and you know this. I've maintained this for the longest time. And I was the head boy at the time of the school, so I was in charge of showing him around, and I got to have a one-on-one conversation with him. he is everything I've dreamt him to be. Like he's somebody I genuinely look up to, and how he goes about talking about India and defending the nation in many spheres, in bipartisan circles as well. And I asked him a question, the answer to which I wouldn't reveal, but the question was, why don't you contest for the prime ministerial candidacy from Congress instead of someone else?
Right.
You know who I'm talking about. And he had a very interesting answer to that.
Shit, I really want to know behind the scenes.
Now, all of this is to say that Tharoor's tweets were more impactful than Trump's tweets back then, and this is before most politicians even use social media. So what Tharoor's handle tweeted on 15th January wreaked havoc. The tweets were so ominous, it was almost unbelievable. The barrage of tweets from his account read, "At Meher Tarar, I love you, Shashi Tharoor, and I go while in love with you, irrevocably, irreversibly, Hamesha, bleeding but always yours, Meher." Another tweet read, "Shashi, I'm not crying anymore. I'm not falling to pieces. I'm more lucid than ever. How little I knew you became visible to me. At Meher Tarar." Another one read, "You unfollowed me, you don't RT me, and you don't answer me on Twitter. I can live with your favorites. I have your personal validation of my words. I don't need any public one. For that, I will wait until we are together publicly. Really, Meher." It seemed like Shashi Tharoor, an Indian politician, made his personal communication with Meher, a Pakistani journalist, public. Twitter scrambled, Tharoor scrambled, Meher scrambled. After all, she was the one being tweeted at and tagged. And soon she responded on Twitter. She tweeted, "Okay, what's going on? Who's tweeting to me? I had an affair with Shashi Tharoor and he's tweeting to me? How does that work?" You see, it wasn't impossible to suspect that Shashi Tharoor had an affair with Meher Tarar. Meher had in fact made a journalistic trip to India in 2013, and Tharoor was just one of the two politicians she interviewed. They were also reportedly seen together at an event in Dubai. That doesn't mean anyone cheated. It just means, however preposterous this allegation was, it wasn't impossible. And more importantly, Sunanda and Shashi were a high-profile couple. These were good-looking, powerful people who were suave in their demeanor. This wasn't the first time they were at the short end of gossip. Ever since they began dating in 2009, they were fodder for gossip columns. From acts of PDA to presence at swanky billionaire parties, they had been the talk of the town before. This time, though, the reasons weren't as dubious. Thankfully, all this confusion was laid to rest when Shashi Tharoor deleted those tweets and officially tweeted, "Sorry folks, my Twitter account has been hacked and will temporarily be deactivated. Bear with me while we resolve this." All was laid to rest. Or was it? This was merely a hasty cover-up because his wife Sunanda Pushkar took credit for the tweets. In the wildest turn of events, she told the Economic Times, quote, "Our accounts have not been hacked and I have been sending out these tweets. I cannot tolerate this. This is a Pakistani woman who is an ISI agent and she is stalking my husband. And you know how men are. He is flattered by the attention. I took upon myself the crimes of this man during the IPL, the Indian Premier League. I will not allow this to be done to me. I just cannot tolerate this. I have nothing more to say." End quote. The thing is, she had a lot more to say, and she took to Twitter for this. Sunanda had suspected a fling between Meher and Shashi for a few months now. She had confided about the suspicion in many of her friends too. This was Sunanda's third marriage and Shashi's third as well. The politician was charismatic, and his reputation as a charmer preceded him. 2013 had been a turbulent year for Sunanda. It wasn't just her insecurities, but her health seemed to have worsened. She said she had lupus, an autoimmune disease where the immune system mistakenly attacks the body's own tissues and organs, causing widespread inflammation. On 15 January 2014, as she sat in her bed in Suite 307 at the Leela Hotel in Delhi's Chanakyapuri, her poor physical and mental condition came to a boil. And that simmering anger translated to a tirade of tweets. From her Twitter account, she tweeted, "At Meher Tarar, Indians who have dignity unfollow her, or there are no people in Pakistan who are desperate for husbands of other women. Shame." Then she tweeted, "At Meher Tarar, the audacity of a woman desperately in love with an Indian. Please, Shashi, don't make me go. I pleaded and begged. I love you, Shashi." Just keep in mind, my narration of these tweets might not have the best modulation because they're written so weirdly, as if in a drunken or furious haze.
No, they seem completely incoherent. I mean, she's calling Meher Tarar out for being a desperate woman, this, that, the other thing, but also it doesn't look great when private laundry is aired in this manner for the country to see. And it clearly, she doesn't seem to be in the best mental state at this point. Very odd tweets.
But the tweets didn't stop there. Another one reads, at Meher Tarar, leave us Indians alone and stop talking to my husband and pleading with him. It's degrading. Respect yourself as a woman. Another one read, it's funny on an election year people want to bring down an MP using a Paki journo who has lost her job and ties with everyone including with Omar. Or perhaps to build up Twitter followers, that's a cheap thing to do. Ask the Pakistanis what they think of her, and yes, 20 calls a day is stalking. Another tweet read, for her information, Shashi and I are very happy together. Sad for her to know. I guess I get sick and go away for treatment and the vultures pounce. Now, Meher didn't leave any stone unturned either. She too retaliated, again on Twitter, tweeting, quote, I have nothing to say to a woman clearly out of her mind. To be called an ISI agent, a stalker, I have nothing to add. Just shows who she is. Another one read, my name is Meher and I am not an ISI agent, or RAW, or CIA, or Mossad, or even the dead KGB. May I go now? Another tweet read, the blonde's akal is weaker than her grammar and spellings. From an affair it has become stalking. Make up your mind, darling. Which one is it? And the final tweet in this tirade read, I'm not avoiding answering any of you. I just consider it beneath me to respond to personal attacks on me here. It's not a Jerry Springer reality show. This was more drama than any episode of Big Boss. News channels, social media, the Delhi elite, everyone was dumbfounded to see the saga unfold right in front of them, right in front of their eyes, in real time.
And now for news from Shashi Tharoor, whose Twitter account has landed him in a fair bit of controversy before. Yesterday, it took a completely new level of drama.
Shashi Tharoor was one of the most respected and prestigious incumbent ministers. What would these claims of infidelity mean for him? And what about Sunanda? How is she doing? Her friends worried for her health. Thankfully, there finally came some semblance of a calm amidst this storm. A joint statement by the couple. But this calm only presaged a bigger storm yet to come. The joint statement published the next day on 16th January read, quote, we are distressed by the unseemly controversy that has arisen about some unauthorized tweets from our Twitter accounts. Various distorted accounts of comments allegedly made by Sunanda have appeared in the press. It appears that some personal and private comments responding to these unauthorized tweets, comments that were not intended for publication, have been misrepresented and led to some erroneous conclusions. We wish to stress that we are happily married and intend to remain that way. Sunanda has been ill and hospitalized this week and is seeking to rest. We would be grateful if the media respects our privacy. End quote.
Aryaan, the first part of this joint statement is so much English word mental gymnastics. What are they trying to say now? That all of these tweets are unauthorized communication?
It went from hacked to
Yeah.
unauthorized to these were draft tweets never meant for publication. Aishwarya, it's a PR cover-up. It's the most botched cover-up.
And hasn't she come forward and told the news channel that she did this?
Yeah.
That's not a tweet.
Yeah, it's a botched cover-up. I mean, man, put yourself in that position. What can you do?
Yeah, nothing.
There's
It's
nothing
a
you.
botched
That's
cover-up.
it's a botched
Yeah,
cover-up.
yeah.
The PR cover-up was underway, and it did not require a genius to know that. And 1,000 miles away from Delhi, in the Emirati city of Dubai, Shiv Pushkar Menon knew this. He knew this was a cover-up. He knew that it was his mom Sunanda who was tweeting this out herself. Shiv was Sunanda's child from her second marriage to Sujit Menon. Shashi was his stepfather. He was a 21-year-old studying in Dubai. That's where Sunanda spent a large chunk of her life and built her fortune. But after marrying Tharoor, she moved to Delhi. Shiv had since become lonely. He loved his mom, but it was the kind of teenage love only kids of single moms can truly comprehend. Their fights were disproportionate, shouting matches on the phone, but an unconditional love underneath it all. Their argument on the midnight of 16th and 17th January was no different. Sunanda called him sometime around 4 a.m. on the 17th of January from her hotel room. She reprimanded him for his irresponsible lifestyle while he called out her public display of anger. Public display of affection wasn't the only kind of PDA Sunanda was known for. This call with her son ended at 4:30 a.m. IST or 3 a.m. Dubai time. Shiv barely got any sleep that night, only to awaken to an odd feeling the next day. A pit in his stomach, a premonition of sorts. He recalls, quote, you know they say parents and their children have this dimension transcending bond? Well, it's real, end quote. 17th January was a Friday, the first day of the weekend in UAE. For Shiv, it had become a ritual to go to Nakul Khanna's house for lunch. You see, Nakul had been a close friend of Sunanda for years, a friendship forged during her stint in Dubai. But now that she was in Delhi, Nakul was the closest thing Shiv had to family, and Nakul knew this. He was a successful businessman, like many of Sunanda's friends, and frequently hosted Shiv at his house for lunch to quell the homesickness of the 21-year-old. That day, 17th January, he and his wife Sheetal hosted Shiv for a late lunch. Nakul recalls Shiv being distressed over the dining table. "I'm not happy with my mom's marriage and her behavior." He went on to lament her mental state and the ongoing Twitter war she was waging against the Pakistani journalist. In fact, the internet backlash had become so intolerable for him that he switched off from the web entirely. He didn't want to take calls, read texts, or watch the news. A break from reality. But that break was about to be broken. As they were finishing their meal, Nakul gets a call from Delhi. It's Sanjay Dewan on the other line, the Honorary Consul General of Cape Verde, a close friend of both Sunanda and Nakul. A hushed conversation ensued between the two men. Nakul hangs up, and his next words are weird to say the least. He insists that Shiv fly to Delhi that very night to look after his mom. More so, he too would fly along with him. Shiv was already planning to fly to Delhi to see Sunanda in a few days, but he was persuaded by Nakul's insistence. He changed his flight, and the thought of seeing his mother sooner made him happy. He knew she was unwell, and that maybe seeing him would make her feel better. But someone's phone rang again. This time it was Shiv's phone, and on the other line was Ashish Das, Sunanda's younger brother. This call was even weirder because Ashish had just re-entered his sister's life. The siblings had had a major falling out years ago, and to be receiving a call from his long-lost uncle out of nowhere was unexpected for Shiv. "Shiv, you must fly down to Delhi tonight to see your mom." What are the odds, the boy thought. First Nakul uncle, now Ashish uncle. They seem quite persistent. Ashish's voice, however, betrayed concern. Shiv sped to his house since Ashish too lived in Dubai, and on his way he continued to receive calls and texts from Sunanda's friends asking him if he was okay. He assumed all this sudden influx of sympathy and concern was because of the Twitter war and the news coverage of their parents' turbulent marriage, something he had known for months. So he did 1+1 and did not think too much of it. The last-minute packing began. Shiv haphazardly stuffed his belongings into a suitcase, but his phone pinged yet again. This message was from someone he met in Goa. It read, "I'm sorry for your loss." Wrong number, Shiv assumed. What a weird text to get from a stranger. He replied, "I'm sorry, I think you have the wrong number." As Shiv Menon mulled over the nonsensical spam text he received, his phone pinged again. It was the same guy from Goa. "Oh, you have not seen the news." Now something felt off. In fact, something was off. And so despite his resolve to stay away from the news, he logged back in and Google searched his mom's name. Sunanda Push. And before he could even finish typing a full name, the auto-suggested prompt read, "Sunanda Pushkar's dead body found in 345 Leela Hotel." Rubbish. Absolute rubbish. Screw the media. Shiv was done with the rumor mill. How dare they circulate such a ridiculous rumor? Even Ashish, Sunanda's brother, brushed off this headline as toxic gossip and assured his nephew that Sunanda is merely sick. Shiv believed him. Why wouldn't he? He had talked to his mom just a few hours ago. How can she mysteriously die? What a bunch of nonsense. They reached Terminal 3 of Dubai International Airport and checked into the Emirates lounge. Money can't buy you happiness, but it can sure buy you a business class ticket and lounge access. But that luxury didn't assuage Shiv's anxiety. He knew where there is smoke, there has to be fire. And his world was about to come burning down. As he collapsed into the couch to get some rest, the default news channel played on the large TV screen. CNN International. The news of the day was about the wife of a high-profile Indian politician who had been found dead in a hotel room. Footage showed a body draped in white being carried out. In that moment, he knew Sunanda Pushkar, mother of Shiv Menon, wife of Shashi Tharoor, sister of Ashish Das, was dead. 27th June 1964. It was a rare day. Common universally, but rare in one's life. It's the only day when a mother hopes her child cries. When a mother gives birth, tears symbolize life. The crying infant is healthy, yet the newborn Sunanda was quiet. The halls of the Srinagar government hospital eerily so too. Jaya Das had just given birth to her. It was her first child. but she stayed quiet. Sunanda would make up for that silence in her years to come by transforming into a woman that spoke her mind, no matter the audience. Jaya and her husband, Second Lieutenant Pushkar Nath Das, didn't know that just yet. Their daughter was a stillborn child. Attempts to resuscitate her began. A shake, a spank, a tiny chest bump, and the baby Sunanda uttered her first cries. First of many. She was alive and well. Jaya and Pushkar couldn't be happier. Sunanda grew up a typical army brat. Aishwarya could relate. Multiple schools, multiple cities, an ever-changing social landscape. From Srinagar, she moved to Bangalore, where she studied at Frank Anthony. Then Udhampur, where she studied at Mount Carmel. Then CGM school in Ambala, and on and on and on. Schools changed, friends changed, but Sunanda remained the unfettered child she was. A knack for academics was apparent. She was the Red House captain in 7th grade, an early trace of her affinity to leadership and power. She had a baby brother too, Ashish. She loved him, and like an old sister, protected him. He was often seen sitting in her lap in bus rides. Ashish's childhood was complicated. He was adopted by his father's older brother, where he got the surname Das. Sunanda kept her dad's name, Pushkar, hence Sunanda Pushkar. Brief stints in Rajasthan followed, but she finally returned to Srinagar for her 11th and 12th grade. Her leadership came to the fore there as she was elected president of the Government College for Women in Srinagar. That remains to this day the city's most prestigious college for 10+2. Being elected the president twice in a row was no small feat, and in doing so, the stillborn child transformed into a tenacious leader. Oratory came naturally to her, to grip a room's gaze, not just because she was tall and slender, but because she had a way with words, undisguised and unrelenting. Men, younger, peers or older, were swayed by her charm. She was the toast of all army parties when she was barely 18. This the people called the Sunanda effect. Her attractiveness was apparent, most of all to herself, who was well aware of the effect she had on people. After graduating, Sunanda got a job at the state-owned hotel in Dal Lake. There, unsurprisingly, she rose up the ranks. So much so that her success as a Kashmiri Pandit woman was documented in a local daily newspaper. It was at that hotel too that she met the man of her dreams, Sanjay Raina, a tall, charismatic and handsome man from her own community. It seemed to be a match made in heaven. They met in 1984 and by 1986 they were married. It was too soon, many thought. The academically inclined Sunanda gave up her passions for a new one, Sanjay. Marriage was the only thing on her mind. While her family readily approved the union, Sanjay's family not so much. They sensed an incompatibility, a hunch that would prove true all too soon. Not that they wished for a told-ya moment, they sure as hell got one. Within only 2 years of being husband and wife, the couple filed for divorce. Fights and arguments had become the norm between the once impulsive lovers. During their courtship, they once drove 250 kilometers just because Sunanda wanted a banana split ice cream at the Oberoi in Delhi. But it was the same impulsiveness that got the better of them. She blamed her strict army upbringing for this departure. Quote, I was always sorry for the underdog, and my family and friends used to teasingly call me Mother Teresa. When I was in grade 6th in Ambala, I helped flood victims. When I was in Jesus and Mary Convent, I used to work with abandoned and physically challenged children at an ashram. There was a blind and spastic kid there who was particularly attached to me. No one wanted him because he wasn't very nice looking, but I used to bathe and feed him. Many people spoke badly of Sanjay, saying curiously that he was strange, and maybe in the beginning that was what drew me to him. End quote.
Aryaan, the picture you've painted so far, obviously this is a woman very sure of herself. She knows of her effect on people. She's confident in whatever room she walks into. This quote though, this is a little like...
You know who it reminds me of?
Who?
Trump.
I swear. There is a certain air of... Other people call me Mother Teresa, you know. Are you...
If other people call you Mother Teresa, which is very weird to begin with, don't go about paraphrasing them.
Right.
You know?
Right. Don't
let it be something, don't quote them.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Just the whole...
And comparing your husband to a spastic kid, like it's just
weird.
the more you learn about Sunanda and the book on her, The Extraordinary Life of Sunanda Pushkar, captures this very dynamic character, one you can fall in love with and one you can hate. And there are aspects of her that make you repulse, this being one of them, of how braggy she is about who she is. But, you know, as I've read more about her, I love everything about that makes her a quirky character.
Interesting. It's also interesting to me to like justify your marriage's end by saying this. It's almost like saying he was weird, I came to his
Yeah, no,
rescue.
it's like saying it didn't work out because I was too good for him.
Exactly, literally.
Sanjay later went on to get remarried, started the Kashmiri restaurant Mealability in Gurgaon, appeared in music videos of Dil Lena Khel Hai Dildar Ka, and composed Jeetega Jeetega for the Indian World Cup cricket team. But back to our protagonist. 24 years old and a divorcee, in 1988, Sunanda still had a long life ahead of her. Hell, it hadn't even begun. Not even a year goes by, and Sunanda begins a new chapter. She moves to Dubai. Now, the reason for this move is contested, but the common denominator is a man named Sujit Menon. She had met him through her ex-husband at a party, and they developed a deep friendship that turned into, well, much more than that. Many speculate her love for Sujit brought her to Dubai, but she denies. Quote, "The truth is, Sujit rescued me. He gave me the strength as a friend to quit a very painful marriage. But he was dating another woman. I was just a friend. I got my divorce in 1988 and went off to Dubai in 1989. End quote. Love or not, a romance blossomed between the two when she moved. By 1991, 27-year-old Sunanda was married again. Sujit and Sunanda were truly happy with each other. In fact, a few days before that fateful day in Suite 345, she remarked to a friend that Sujit had been the only true love of her life. Meanwhile, in Dubai, Sunanda became an event management baron. You name the high-profile event, and Sunanda was behind it. Her networking skills, charming demeanor, and resourcefulness earned her clients all over the glitzy circles of Dubai. In 1992, she had her first child with Sujit, a baby boy named Shiv. Shiv Menon then became her life, and her life seemed to become normal. Sujit began as an investment broker, but then joined forces with his wife to become a full-time event planner. And in the up-and-coming Emirati town, this was a lucrative career. They nabbed the best contracts. And then came their biggest one ever, a show featuring South superstar Mammootty. The show was meant to draw hordes of crowds and generate massive revenue for the client, but it went kaput. Fake tickets and poor organization cost the parties $500,000 dirhams. In today's terms, that's roughly $200,000 or 1.6 crore rupees. According to Ashish, her younger brother, quote, "Didi was naive. She had no business sense. She would think from her heart, which has been her main problem in life. This Mammootty show flopped and they had to incur heavy losses and debts." End quote. A professional disaster transmuted into the personal. The couple never really recovered from it, which is not to say that they didn't try. Sujit packed bags and tried anew in Delhi, starting an import-export business. Sunanda fully supported him. But this endeavor too floundered. For Sunanda though, her new job as the head of an alternative marketing department at an advertising firm called Bozell Prime earned her laurels. She rose up the ranks, an unfailing characteristic for her. To support her husband, she sent money to him, but he wasn't the only man she was responsible for. After the Kashmiri Pandit massacre that began in 1990, her family lost a ton of land and property. Her younger brother Ashish was no longer able to support himself. And so, just like when they were kids, he found himself in his sister's laps. She took care of him, telling her retired father that she'll incur all his financial expenses. She put him through D.Y. Patil Engineering School and also helped him establish himself in the Dubai circuit. And then there was Shiv Menon. Not a man yet, he too relied on his mother. While she played mom, dad, wife, sister and daughter, her husband Sujit tried hands at other businesses. From a restaurant in Pune, to a film with Jackie Shroff, to a final ditch attempt to score a coal mining deal in southern Africa. He lobbied for years to get the contract, but in a shocker, the BJP won the elections in 1996.
सत्ता का खेल तो चलेगा, सरकारें आएंगी, जाएंगी, पार्टियां बनेगी, बिगड़ेंगी, मगर ये देश रहना चाहिए, इस देश का लोकतंत्र अमर रहना चाहिए.
Ousting the incumbent Congress, and with it ousting all of Sujit's laboured efforts at lobbying Congress politicians. Their relationship was in tatters. Debts, distance and dependence caused rifts, but they still tried. It was March 1997 when Sunanda's phone went off. Call after call, text after text, very similar to the ones Shiv got a few decades later in 2014. Sujit's dead body was found in a hotel room in Delhi's Karol Bagh.
So his body too was found in a hotel room.
And the circumstances under which it was found remain mysterious till this day.
So all of us obviously know things about this case just because it's so high profile. This is a detail I did not know, and I feel like, I don't know if it gets talked about enough or not.
It doesn't.
I've never heard of this.
It doesn't.
That's wild.
The Karol Bagh Police Department's archives don't state a cause. Whether it was natural or not remains unknown. Rumors include it was a suicide, it was a car accident, he hanged himself, he was murdered by debtors. We do not know. Shiv and Sunanda were shattered. Shiv was just 5 years old, and Sunanda found herself alone again, and this time not of her own volition. Sujit's death remains shrouded in mystery till this day, a fate his wife was soon to share. But life had to go on. Dubai lost its charm when she lost what brought her there in the first place. She opened the world map and quite literally saw Canada and thought, hey, why not? Her reason to move to Canada was in part an impulse, in part a yearning for a better passport, one that opens more doors than her Indian credentials. Canada also had more affordable healthcare, which owing to Shiv's speech impediment proved essential. With Sujit gone, all he left her with was his debt. Money was sparse. The next decade of her life was eventful. One could say it was also quite colourful. I'll not get into the weeds of it. The spark notes shall suffice. Sunanda was constantly in and out of relationships, relentlessly bored with a man and fearful of commitment. Twice previously when she committed and gave her all, it led to nothing. So now she gave up the concept of commitment altogether. She was in multiple monogamous relationships through the early 2000s, but several of her partners report feeling insecure owing to her, flirty demeanor. At parties, women would scoff at how she flirted with their husbands, who in turn were bedazzled that a beauty like her would give them time. But beauty wasn't her only asset. Brains took precedence. It's easy to cast a successful woman as a pariah, as a diva. It's easy to cast a woman with several sexual partners as uncouth. While I don't want to dive into the details of all of her flings, I don't want to hide it from you either. Especially because Sunanda did not hide it. She was bindas, carefree. It would be unfair for me to paint her like a pious angel. She wasn't, and she did not care. According to one of her partners, quote, Sunanda's one weakness was men in power, from CEOs, CFOs to politicians, end quote. And while there was this flirtatious side to her, the brains can often go unnoticed or shrugged for a woman of her stature. By the end of the first decade of this millennium, around 2009, Sunanda had amassed a fortune of 120 crores, and no man can take credit for that. In Canada, once she aced the event industry, she returned to Dubai in 2004 and got into real estate. In quintessential fashion, she rose up the ranks of Dubai's burgeoning real estate market. In fact, it was Sunanda who booked Shah Rukh Khan his signature villa at Palm Jumeirah. Not only did she sell properties, she bought them. In Shashi Tharoor's annual declaration filed in 2013 as part of the Election Commission mandate, Sunanda's portfolio was made public domain. According to the affidavit, quote, Sunanda owned 2 3-bedroom apartments in Palm Jumeirah, a beachside apartment in Jumeirah Beach Residence, and 2 apartments in executive towers in Dubai. She also had her house in Canada and some land in Jammu. In total, she was in joint ownership of 12 properties in Dubai, 6 apartments and 6 villas, end quote.
Aryaan, in my estimation, these are assets worth, I don't know how many hundreds of crores.
Now, that's key. They are worth hundreds of crores now. In 2004, the Dubai property market was many thought it was a bubble. Many thought it's never going to amount to anything. And that's when she got in. And Dubai property in 2004 was Bitcoin in 2012. It could have turned into nothing, and it was
Right.
cheap. It was worth peanuts. Even today, Dubai property is far more reasonably priced than properties in other metropolitans. So that's how she got her hands on it. No illicit ways. She got them legally, and she happened to strike
Yeah,
gold.
because that's what I was thinking. How much money is there in event planning, even very fancy
Yeah.
event planning, and in real estate, that you're amassing properties that are, like you said, today of this nature?
One of the main things in real estate is when you flip a property,
Correct.
right? You get one, you sell
You fix
that,
it
you buy
up,
another one,
right.
you fix it up, and you keep selling. And so if you do that, and suddenly your property's value goes 10x, 20x delta,
Yeah.
you hold on to the property.
Right.
With Dubai becoming what it has now, the prices of her early investments skyrocketed. So did her riches, her circles, and her status. A decade has gone by. It's June 2009. Sunanda is wealthy. Sunanda has powerful friends. And whatever game of social snakes and ladders Sunanda had been playing, she was at 99. One roll away from winning it. And that solitary one of the die came in the form of Shashi Tharoor. It was a party at Gems founder and billionaire Sunny Varki's Emirates Hills villa. The tall, dashing and eloquent Shashi walked in, capturing the room's gaze. Sunanda had found a worthy competitor. or perhaps a partner. Shashi Tharoor was an enigma that had just entered Indian politics after a long tenure at the United Nations. Shashi was the youngest to ever earn a PhD from Tufts University at just 22, known to read 300 or 400 books a year. In his professional years at the UN, he became the youngest ever department head and became the Under Secretary General to Kofi Annan. After losing a close bid for the post of the highest position of UN Secretary General to Ban Ki-moon, thanks to a veto by China, he returned to the motherland to make a difference in domestic policy. If it's not already apparent, I am a fan of him. Take political parties and politics out of it. I'm a fan of the man. There are a few orators I look up to, Obama, John Bercow, and Shashi Tharoor. So when he tweeted about me in high school, I was the giddiest teenager in the corridor. Consequently, when I decided to pick this case, I knew I would have to keep my bias aside. Consider this a disclaimer, a clarification, or perhaps a precautionary notice. In writing this script, I have tried my best to do so. Now, add to these qualifications, tall, fair, and handsome, and the Indian Minister for External Affairs, and you can see why Sunanda was gobsmacked by him, and him by her. The problem was, Shashi was a man after all, and men can be douchebags, with all due respect. During the course of their affair, Shashi was married to his former UN colleague Krista Giles. His affair with Sunanda ended that marriage. But this wasn't his first marriage. Much like Sunanda, he had had another wife, Tilotama Mukherjee, and they divorced in the late 1980s. Also, while it is certain that he and Giles were partners, some doubt whether they were officially married. Friends of the lovers knew that something was brewing, but it was only confirmed to the public in February of 2010 when Shashi attended the wedding of Union Minister Jitin Prasad along with Sunanda, a public display of commitment. As Shashi's divorce proceedings began with his Canadian ex-wife, Sunanda and Shashi were seen everywhere together. Book launches, cricket matches, political events, you name it. Now the year is 2010. The IPL, the Indian Premier League, is in its third season and has morphed from a cricket tournament into a billion-dollar behemoth, a dazzling spectacle of money, glamour and power. Franchises were being auctioned for hundreds of crores, and investors from every corner of the globe were desperate for a piece of the action. Into this high-stakes arena stepped a consortium named Rendezvous Sports World. Against formidable bidders like the Sahara Group and the Adani Group, Rendezvous, a relative dark horse, shocked the establishment by winning the bid for the new Kochi IPL franchisee. The deal, worth a staggering $333 million or 1,530 crores, immediately raised eyebrows. Not because the new team was entering the fray, but because of one particular name attached to this franchisee, Sunanda Pushkar. At the time, she was known publicly as Shashi Tharoor's close companion and soon to be his wife. He was the suave, articulate Minister of State for External Affairs, a rising star in Indian politics. Her involvement immediately sparked a critical question. Was Tharoor leveraging his political clout to secure the franchisee for his personal gain? What truly set off the alarms was a sweat equity clause. This financial arrangement granted Sunanda a free 19% stake in Rendezvous Sports World, valued at nearly 70 crore rupees. Sweat equity is typically given to individuals for their expertise rather than a monetary investment. But what expertise, the critics wondered, did a Dubai-based businesswoman bring to a cricket franchisee? And why was it worth millions of dollars for free? The optics were disastrous. The storm broke on Twitter, a platform then still in its infancy as a political weapon. At the forefront of the attack was Lalit Modi, the flamboyant and controversial IPL commissioner who you've seen hanging around with Vijay Mallya, absconding from Indian authorities in London even today. On April 10th, 2010, he dropped a bombshell with a series of tweets, publicly revealing Sunanda's stake and directly implicating the minister. He tweeted, quote, "I was asked to not get into who owns Rendezvous. Why? The same has been minuted in my records. We should know who are the stakeholders." End quote. And then he tweeted again, quote, "I was told by Tharoor not to get into who owns Rendezvous, especially Sunanda Pushkar. Why?" End quote. The cricket world was stunned. The political world erupted in chaos. Social media was set ablaze. Tharoor, blindsided, responded almost immediately, denying everything. He insisted his only role was as a mentor, helping bring a team to his home state of Kerala. He tweeted in response, quote, "I have no financial interest in any IPL team. My sole concern was bringing cricket to Kerala. The lies being spread are baseless." End quote. Sunanda, thrust into a national spotlight she never asked for, came forward to defend her name. She claimed she was an independent, self-made businesswoman and the equity was legitimate compensation for her work. She told the Economic Times, quote, "I have been given this equity in return for the sweat and hard work I have put in. I will not allow myself to be used as a political pawn," end quote. But the scandal was spiraling out of control. To the media and a voracious public, she was no longer a successful entrepreneur, but in her own words, a slut, some kind of brainless eye candy. Her distress became painfully public. Quote, "My reputation is being dragged through the mud for no reason," she lamented to the Hindustan Times. "Why am I being targeted? I did not ask for this. I've done nothing wrong, yet I am being painted as some kind of opportunist." The Congress party, wary of the taint of corruption, began to distance itself from Tharoor. The opposition, led by the BJP, went for the kill, demanding his resignation and calling it a textbook case of misusing a public office. The pressure became unbearable. In a move seen as an attempt to save Tharoor's career, Sunanda announced she would surrender her stake in the franchisee. But it was too little, too late. Just days later, in April 2010, Shashi Tharoor resigned as Minister of State for External Affairs.
I am grateful for their support and encouragement, and I am determined to continue to do my best for India and for the ideals that brought me back here.
In a final ironic twist, the man who had ignited the firestorm was himself consumed by its flames. The BCCI, incensed that Modi had breached confidentiality agreements by revealing the Kochi stakeholders, launched an investigation into his own conduct. By the end of 2010, Lalit Modi was accused of financial irregularities, tax evasion, and money laundering. He was suspended and later banned for life from Indian cricket, becoming an international fugitive living in exile in London. Tharoor eventually fought back, contesting and winning the 2011 Lok Sabha elections and reclaiming his political stature. However, the IPL scandal left a permanent scar. It was the first time Sunanda's name was dragged through the mud on a national scale. It cemented her public image as a controversial figure, and perhaps most importantly, planted a seed of resentment. She felt she had been used and had taken the fall for her man, a sentiment that would fester and re-emerge with her tragic consequences years later. The questions surrounding the Kochi deal, like so many parts of her life, were never truly answered. With the IPL controversy behind them, Sunanda and Shashi Tharoor married in August 2010, an intimate wedding in Shashi's ancestral Kerala home. When Sunanda moved to New Delhi, she didn't just step into the role of a politician's wife. She kicked the door down and set up a throne for herself. The city's conservative and contrived political world had a very specific mold for ministers' wives. They were to be rarely seen and almost never heard. Sunanda shattered that mold, unapologetically. She was seen everywhere, from exclusive dinners in Dutian's Delhi to book launches, movie premieres, and even the Indian F1 Grand Prix. Sunanda and Shashi became the city's most visible and photographed power couple. And they weren't just present, they were intensely together. The chemistry between them was palpable, often making others in the room feel like they were intruding on a private moment. At a business event, a former union minister recalled, quote, "The vibes between the two were so strong and in your face that they made the others uncomfortable. There was a lot of verbal and physical PDA. Tharoor would glance at Sunanda every 2 minutes and she would keep smiling encouragingly," end quote. In the dedication of one of his books, Tharoor described her as, quote, "the love of my life and the life of my love," end quote. This open affection was a stark contrast to the stiff upper lip of Delhi's elite. Sunanda was tactile in a city where a polite namaste was the expected greeting. At a formal dinner held for a former Sri Lankan president, she insisted on kissing nearly every bureaucrat on the cheek, leaving the buttoned-up attendees bewildered. She deliberately crossed the unspoken line at parties, leaving the women's side to hold animated conversations with the men, a transgression viewed with immense disapproval. Her fiery, outspoken nature was not reserved for social gatherings, mind you. In 2012, while accompanying Tharoor to his constituency in Thiruvananthapuram, she was mobbed by a crowd of workers. When a young man allegedly tried to grope her, Sunanda swung around and slapped him hard across the face. The incident was captured on camera and went viral. She was so livid that she skipped the official reception for her husband later that evening. This unapologetic, larger-than-life persona polarized the city. Delhi's high society quickly divided into what became known as the Sunanda camps, those who loved her and those who loved to hate her. Corporate lawyer Aryaan, a college friend of Tharoor's, put it dryly, Come on, we all know she was no shrinking violet, and journalist Kaveri Bamzai called her a political time bomb. For a time, their life in the capital was a whirlwind of power, parties, and passion. But as 2013 dawned, friends and observers began to notice a change.
Aryaan, whatever you said about her in the beginning, the open airing of the laundry, the weird comparisons to Mother Teresa, I personally love women like this.
That's exactly it. Yeah.
There is something about the brazenness, about the ability to take space in a room that just really, it's endearing to the little rebel in me. And I know society tries so hard to clamp down on a personality like this, but it's just something about it I really like.
Sunanda to me is the manifestation of the word bindas, which translates to carefree. And if you want to love Sunanda, you'll find parts of her that you love. If you want to hate Sunanda, oh boy, you will find parts of her you want to hate. I've just read all of them, and so I'm just fascinated by her character.
And it must take a man of so much strength as well to love a woman like that in the face of a society that tells you that's not 100%. How she's supposed to be.
Yeah. And that was Shashi Tharoor. Right. He was also somebody that, had his equal share of problems in the realm of romance. Right. And that's why they got along, and that's why ultimately, as we'll find out, it seemed to stop working. The public displays of affection became less frequent, replaced by whispers of tense arguments. The fairy tale, it seemed, was beginning to show its cracks, setting the stage for the tragic events that would soon unfold. The first major fissure appeared in April 2013. A Lahore-based Pakistani journalist named Meher Tarar came to India and interviewed Shashi Tharoor. Sunanda's intuition, sharpened by the political intrigue of Delhi, told her that this was more than a professional acquaintance. Meher Tarar became her central obsession, the embodiment of her deepest insecurities. The suspicion exploded into a full-blown crisis in June 2013. Tharoor travelled to Dubai for a conference, and Sunanda accused him of spending 3 nights there with Meher Tarar. Her accusation wasn't just a wild guess, it was fueled by her information from her network. Amar Singh, a close friend, later recounted that Sunanda had received a call from a friend who worked at the Dubai hotel and had seen a do not disturb sign hanging outside the room booked for the couple all day, not knowing Sunanda was in Delhi at the time. For Sunanda, this was irrefutable proof of betrayal. The fallout was immediate and catastrophic. Shortly after, Sunanda discovered emails in which Tharoor's sisters gently hinted that it might be better if he attended an upcoming family reunion in England alone. For a woman already feeling like an outsider in her husband's cerebral world, this was a devastating blow. The private turmoil began to bleed into their public life. On their 3rd wedding anniversary, August 22, 2013, Tharoor posted a seemingly innocuous tweet. Forgot to get flowers for my wife, and she was still gracious at our wedding anniversary lunch. To a city that watched their every move, the message was a clear signal of trouble in paradise. The passion that once fueled their public displays of affection now ignited furious arguments. One of the most infamous incidents occurred at a high-profile party. At a dinner hosted by the then Union Minister Salman Khurshid and his wife Louise, the couple, who were usually the epitome of public affection, had a jarring and visible confrontation. Sunanda, who friends said was already in an agitated state over her suspicions, engaged Tharoor in a heated argument in full view of other guests. The tense exchange was a stark departure from their usual "Jaan, come here, Jaan, let's go there" dynamic, and left many people in Delhi's elite circles talking for days. Sunanda's emotional state deteriorated through the latter half of the year. She told friends she was suffering from lupus, an autoimmune disease that she claimed would soon kill her. At a literary event in Jaipur, she threw a public tantrum over seating protocols. Later at the same event, she broke down while confiding in writer Shobha Day, saying that she felt unloved and betrayed. She had, Day later recalled, quote, reached breaking point and was ready to go public. Her conversations with friends grew more desperate. She would call journalists at all hours, threatening to expose her husband. Tarun Tejpal, a journalist and friend, noted that her state of mind had become alarming. He felt she was unraveling, headed for a catastrophe. The descent reached its public climax on January 15, 2014, just 2 days before her death. On a flight from Thiruvananthapuram to Delhi, Sunanda, who had become adept at accessing Tharoor's phones, reportedly found more messages exchanged between him and Meher Tarar. She confronted him then and there. Fellow passengers, including senior Congress leader Manish Tiwari, were captive witnesses to a bitter and loud spat that raged at 30,000 feet.
The argument reportedly turned physical when, in a moment of fury, Sunanda slapped Tharoor. Their helper, Narayan, was witness to his employer's bitter spat. Sunanda spent the rest of the flight in the bathroom. It was a humiliating, inescapable confrontation. The fairy tale was not just over, it was now in a nosedive, and the whole world was watching. After the fight on the flight, Sunanda Pushkar did not go home. On the afternoon of January 15, 2014, her friend Sunil escorted her directly from the Delhi airport to the Leela Palace Hotel, where she checked into suite 307. She was a storm of activity, making frantic calls to journalists like Barkha Dutt, telling them she had moved out of her husband's official residence. In these calls, she kept repeating a line that had become her mantra of betrayal. Quote, "I took the flak for him in the IPL." The next day, January 16th, the hotel staff moved her to a larger, more secluded space on the same floor, Suite 345.
There is no room 345 anymore.
That evening, the public got one final glimpse of the couple together, and we are back to that joint statement that they had issued after the Meher Tarar fiasco, the statement that was political theatre for a ravenous public. It insisted they were happily married, and that Sunanda was simply ill and seeking rest. But for anyone who knew the reality of the past few days, the words were hollow. That was the final time they would be seen together, alive. When they got back to their hotel, the fights resumed. Hotel staff got complaints about the loudness of the couple. While Tharoor spent the night at Suite 345 and left early in the morning for an important Congress event, Sunanda's night entered a maddening frenzy. Her frantic behavior resulted in calls to the media. Like I said, she reached out to Barkha Dutt from NDTV with the same allegations about Meher Tarar and the IPL, but she also reached out to Sagarika Ghosh of CNN IBN. To her, she spoke of the IPL this time, claiming she had documents that would expose the scandal and that she intended to hold a press conference the next day to do so. Ghosh, sensing the gravity and volatility of the situation, suggested they meet in the morning so she could see the material for herself. As the night wore on, her calls became more specific, more strategic. Just after midnight, at 12:10 a.m. on January 17th, she called veteran journalist Nalini Singh. She was distressed, but she had a specific request. She needed Nalini's help to retrieve deleted BlackBerry messages between Tharoor and Meher. She believed these messages were the final proof she needed, and she wanted them by morning. Her anger was directed squarely at her rival. "I will not let her get away with this," she told Nalini. She also tried repeatedly to reach Rahul Kanwal of Headlines Today, who had recently aired an interview with Meher Tarar. She left a series of missed calls after 1 a.m., following up with a text message expressing her fury over the interview.
She'd watched Center Stage. She sent me a few responses. She was also on Twitter. Last evening, she watched Center Stage, where we had Meher Tarar, the Pakistani journalist whom she accused of being in a relationship with Shashi Tharoor. There were some private BBM conversations that she'd put out on Twitter.
She told him Meher had ruined her life and that she wanted to do an interview immediately to set the record straight about the IPL. Her last known communication was a text message sent at 4:10 a.m. to Prema Sridevi, a journalist with Times Now. It was a final, urgent summons. She asked Sridevi to come and meet her immediately, again stating her intention to blow the lid off IPL. The call was never answered. The meeting never happened. Sunanda Pushkar's final act was a plea for an audience, an attempt to have the final word. What was it that Sunanda wanted to tell the world so badly? Another rant or something else? The sun rose to a cold, foggy Delhi morning. It is a day of immense political significance for the Congress party. The AICC is holding a crucial session at the Tal Katora Stadium, an event designed to set the stage for the upcoming general elections and anoint Rahul Gandhi as the party's leader. For Shashi Tharoor, a prominent minister and MP, attendance is not optional, it is a political imperative. He leaves the Leela Hotel in the morning, leaving Sunanda behind in the suite. He spends the entire day in the public eye and is seen with fellow ministers, party workers, and is under the constant gaze of the national media. He is present there for Rahul Gandhi's key speech, a moment of high political drama for the party.
To make this democratization reach further and further into the heart of our country. That is where the answer lies.
His day is a scheduled public performance of his role as senior leader. Tharoor returns to the Leela late that afternoon of the 17th, a detail that stands out later. According to the statement he later gave to the police, he arrived around 4:30 pm but left soon after for another meeting, returning again at 7 pm. That 2.5-hour window is crucial to note. When he did finally come back the second time at night, he entered the living area of suite 345 and found it empty. Now, mind you, these aren't just hotel rooms, these are full-fledged suites. The door to the bedroom was closed and locked from the inside. He knocked, but there was no answer. It was natural to assume Sunanda was resting inside after a turbulent few days, so he settled into the living room to work. The minutes ticked by. He tried calling her mobile phone, but it went unanswered. As evening set in, his unease grew. He knocked again, this time louder. Sunanda! Sunanda, are you awake? Silence. His alarm growing, he called his personal assistant R.K. Sharma and the family friend Sanjay Devan, the consul general from Cape Verde, who was also in the hotel. Together with the hotel staff, they gathered outside the locked door around 7:30 pm. They used a master key, but the internal latch held fast. They put their shoulders to the heavy wood. The latch splinters, the door swings open, and they step into the dim, still air of the bedroom. The curtains are drawn, the room steeped in twilight. On the king-size white bed, the queen is lying on her side, a quilt pulled up to her chest. It looks like a person in deep sleep. Tharoor moves towards the bed, calling her name. He reaches out to touch her, to shake her awake. The moment his hand makes contact with her skin, the illusion of peaceful slumber shatters. She is cold, unnaturally cold. Panic erupts. Dr. Rajat Mohan from Gangaram Hospital is urgently summoned. He arrives around 8:30 pm and moves quickly to the bedside. He checks for a pulse, for breath, for any sign of life. There is none. The truth is already hanging in the air, heavy and irreversible. Sunanda Pushkar is dead. Tharoor, according to those present, collapses into a chair, his face a mask of disbelief. The police are called and the luxury suite is transformed into a crime scene. Abhinav Kumar, Tharoor's personal secretary and an IPS officer, rushes through the hotel. He walks into the bedroom and moves clinically to the bedside. He reaches for a wrist. The skin is cold, the limbs stiff. Rigor mortis has already set in. He knows instantly that she's been dead for hours, estimating the time of death to be at least 4 to 6 hours prior, sometime in the mid-afternoon, while her husband was at a political convention or while he was back in the hotel for that brief 2.5-hour stint. As forensic teams begin their work, they find 2 near-empty strips of the anti-anxiety drug Alprax on her bedside table. Her body is moved to AIIMS for a post-mortem led by Dr. Sudhir Gupta. The initial findings are explosive. The cause of death is declared sudden and unnatural. And then comes the detail that blows the case wide open. The autopsy reveals 15 injury marks on her body, including bruises, a deep teeth bite on her forearm, and a peculiar injection mark on her wrist. The marks suggest a scuffle. The quiet scene in the hotel room was not one of peaceful passing. And as the news of a body in suite 345 began its unstoppable spread through the capital, it sent out ripples of information distorted and coded across the globe. It is those ripples that found their way to Dubai, manifesting as the series of strange, unsettling phone calls that had started our story. The pit in Shiv Menon's stomach now had a source. The frantic insistence of his friend Nakul and his uncle Ashish now had a reason. The cryptic text message, "I'm sorry for your loss," was no longer a mistake. The answer to the mystery that began his day was now screaming from a CNN broadcast in an airport lounge, a world away from the silent, sealed suite where his mother lay. Now, if this story wasn't dramatic enough, love, power, lies, it's only going to get weirder. Enter forensics. On January 20th, 2014, the first post-mortem report was handed over to the police in a sealed envelope by the team of doctors at AIIMS. The findings were stark. The death was sudden and unnatural, and the cause was poisoning. The report specifically pointed to the circumstantial evidence, like the 2 nearly empty strips of Alprax found on a bedside table, and stated that the death was suggestive of alprazolam poisoning. Alprazolam, a potent anti-anxiety medication, seemed to fit the narrative of a woman in deep emotional distress. The initial conclusion, though tragic, appeared straightforward: suicide by drug overdose. Let's mark this as theory number 1. And it is, mind you, plausible. But this simple explanation began to unravel almost immediately. As per standard procedure, Sunanda's viscera, samples of her internal organs, were sent to the Central Forensic Science Laboratory, CFSL, for a detailed toxicological analysis. When the viscera report was submitted on March 29th, it contained a stunning contradiction. There was no trace of alprazolam found in the samples. The report did find traces of caffeine, ethyl alcohol, and acetaminophen, a common painkiller, but not the lethal dose of the drug that the Ames report had cited as the likely cause of death. The investigation was thrown into a state of confusion now, obviously. How could the Ames autopsy point so clearly to alprazolam poisoning if the viscera analysis found none? And just when this case needed some sanity, a conspiracy found its way instead. In July 2014, a bombshell allegation suggested a high-level cover-up. In a story that broke across media outlets, Dr. Sudhir Gupta, the very man who had handled the Ames autopsy panel, alleged in a formal complaint that he had been pressured by powerful figures to submit a false, quote, tailor-made report. He claimed he was forced to state that Sunanda's death was from natural causes.
My basic job was to conduct an autopsy in a fair manner, impartial manner, and give the report to the concerned investigating officer. He has spoken to me several times during autopsy, before autopsy, after autopsy.
Both Adarsh Kumar as well as Sudhir Gupta claim that there was pressure, in fact, to make the autopsy report as natural death.
According to Dr. Gupta's letter to the Health Ministry, the pressure came directly from the then director of Ames and was done on behalf of Shashi Tharoor. This claim is huge, and it's not just from a rando on the street. Dr. Gupta not only headed the autopsy panel, but held one of the most senior-most positions at the forensic department of the country's best medical college. Moreover, his claims were not made in isolation. Dr. Adarsh Kumar, another physician who was part of the 3-member autopsy team, later backed him up. Dr. Kumar stated that, quote, pressure was put on him and other doctors in the forensic department to pass off Sunanda's death as natural, end quote. On the other hand, Ames authorities swiftly convened a press conference and denied the allegations, calling them baseless and an attempt by Dr. Gupta to sensationalize an internal service matter related to his promotion.
एम्स प्रशासन की तरफ से किसी भी तरह का दबाव डॉक्टर सुधीर गुप्ता या उनकी टीम पर पोस्टमार्टम रिपोर्ट को अमेंड बदलने या उसमें कोई चेंज लाने के लिए कभी भी नहीं रहा है.
Ames spokesperson categorically denied the allegation, stating, quote, there was no extraneous pressure ever on Dr. Gupta with regard to his medical opinion in any case, end quote. As reported by the Hindustan Times, police sources and even some of Dr. Gupta's own colleagues began to question his motives, suggesting his claims were linked to an ongoing feud over the department's top post. The counter-narrative was clear. This wasn't a whistleblower, it was a disgruntled employee. Not to jump ahead, but Dr. Gupta also took his grievances to court. He challenged the promotion of a colleague, Dr. O.P. Murthy, alleging that his own seniority was deliberately purged to facilitate Murthy's promotion. The purpose of this, according to Dr. Gupta, was to eventually sideline him and obtain a tailor-made report in the highly sensitive Sunanda Pushkar case. For what it's worth, he is still the professor and head of Department of Forensic Medicine at Ames and made headlines during the Sushant Singh Rajput case, calling it a murder. But Dr. Gupta had more evidence to support his claims. Adding another layer of complexity were emails that Shashi Tharoor had sent to the Ames director in the days following the autopsy. In these emails, which were later made public and verified, Tharoor forwarded the opinions of other doctors who speculated that Sunanda's death could have been accidental, possibly caused by a fatal reaction to her medications due to an undiagnosed lupus condition or an electrolyte imbalance from her having only coconut water for days. Aishwarya, now, what are your thoughts on these emails that Shashi Tharoor is sending to Ames' head?
Aryaan, to me, obviously there are multiple possible explanations here just because we have nothing that's directly linking him to this murder. It's all just circumstantial. It's possible this is a grieving husband trying to make sense of this. It's also possible that this is a very high-ranking official who's already been in so much controversy and he's trying to stay out of it by hoping, praying to God that his wife's death is an accidental death of some kind from the drugs and whatnot. But obviously there are so many fishy circumstances here.
I see the argument Dr. Gupta is making, although I do think that there was some internal turmoil at AIIMS that was administrative that made this case sucked into. When is there not actually? Even when there isn't, there is.
It's like the Arushi Talwar case where it was the CBI's 100%. Internal dynamics.
Internal dynamics always play a part.
Right.
For me, and this is Aryaan keeping his biases aside, I thought a lot about this. I think Tharoor seeking different explanations of different doctors is a very normal thing to do. We do that with our own grandparents. Take them to 5 doctors who are all apparently the best 5 in India, where you go to Medanta or AIIMS or you go to Gangaram, and then you try to get as many opinions, as many second, third, fourth opinions as you can. And so I think that's what he did.
Aryaan, did any of those reports say what is not favorable for Tharoor, which is that this was a poisoning, it wasn't an accidental overdose, this is not a natural death by any standard to her lupus medication or whatnot?
We wouldn't know. The ones that he did share with the AIIMS director were the ones that sort of pointed at an accidental death, and his only request was, please prod these theories as well. These are what some other experts are saying, not as a final admission of what must have happened, but just saying this is what some other experts have said. If you can prod that,
kind of suspicious. I don't know. It is to me, because imagine you have a wife who's not aged, who is unwell of lupus, but not so much so that she is to pass any day now.
Yeah.
And you find her dead in the hotel room.
Yeah.
I feel like the first reaction is, what the hell happened here? I think there is foul play involved. Not that this is a...
No, Aishwarya, I don't think so.
Really?
I don't think that would be my first take. I think I would have thought it was either a drug overdose or suicide, and I think
drug overdose does make sense because of her mental state,
and that's what he is sort of saying is probably the case, either drug overdose or electrolyte imbalance. But right now, what is being perpetrated is suicide, right? And to be fair, suicide does implicate him. If not murder, suicide also means, did you push her to that? And that's how we get to our next theory. The investigation is now at a complete impasse. The official cause of death was poisoning, but the specific poison was unknown. The medical reports were in direct conflict, and the lead forensic doctor was publicly alleging a cover-up while his own credibility was being questioned. The confusion was so total that the Delhi police, unable to get a conclusive result from Indian labs, eventually sent Sunanda Pushkar's viscera samples to an FBI laboratory in the United States for a final definitive analysis.
Delhi police SIT chief, who's probing the Sunanda Pushkar murder, is expected to visit FBI labs to get further clarity on the case.
In all this drama, one forensic fact emerged. The neat theory of suicide had been obliterated, leaving behind only 2 options: an accidental overdose or a far more sinister and complicated puzzle that would soon force the Delhi police to change the entire direction of their case. For nearly a year, the case of Sunanda Pushkar's death remained in a state of investigative limbo, a confusing mess of contradictory reports and public accusations. Then, on January 6, 2015, almost a year on, the Delhi police made a move that changed everything. The police commissioner, B.S. Bassi, called a press conference and announced that a first information report, or FIR, had been registered. The case was no longer being treated as a suicide or an accident. It was now officially a case of murder. The catalyst for this dramatic turn was the final medical opinion submitted by the AIIMS board on December 29, 2014. This third report, after reviewing all the evidence, was unequivocal. It reiterated that Sunanda's death was sudden and unnatural and caused by poisoning, but it went a crucial step further. The report stated that the poison could have been administered via injection, referencing the unexplained injection mark on her body. It concluded that homicide could not be ruled out. The Delhi police, now armed with the medical opinion that suggested foul play, registered a case of murder under Section 302 of the Indian Penal Code against unknown persons and formed an SIT, a Special Investigations Team, to probe this further. The investigation was no longer about why Sunanda would take her own life. It was about who would want her dead. 2 primary motives immediately came into focus. The first was the IPL connection. Sunanda had been vocal, especially in her final days, about her intention to expose a major scam related to the $1 million cricket league. Friends like journalist Lalit Singh and politician Amar Singh later told investigators that Sunanda felt she had been made a scapegoat in the Kochi Tuskers deal and was determined to reveal the truth. BJP leader Subramaniam Swamy, meanwhile, who had been demanding a CBI probe for months, publicly theorized that she was silenced by a powerful syndicate involved in money laundering through the IPL. The other, more immediate theory was a crime of passion, and the investigation inevitably began to zero in on Shashi Tharoor himself. The SIT re-examined every detail of the couple's tumultuous final days, the public fights, the furious argument on the flight, and the 15 injury marks on Sunanda's body, including the bite mark which suggested a violent physical struggle. Tharoor was subjected to hours of intense questioning by the SIT on multiple occasions. His domestic help, Aryaan Singh, and driver Bajrangi were also put through polygraph tests in an attempt to piece together the events of that final night. A central puzzle for the SIT was the unknown poison. With Indian labs providing conflicting results and with theories ranging from radioactive isotopes to obscure snake venoms, the Delhi police took the unprecedented step of sending it to the FBI laboratory. The FBI report, which arrived nearly 9 months later in November 2015, only added to the confusion. It found no trace of any exotic, untraceable poison. Instead, it confirmed the presence of the anti-anxiety drug alprazolam, the same drug the AIMS team had initially suspected but the Indian CFSL lab had failed to find. It also detected lidocaine, an anti-arrhythmic drug used to regulate heartbeats which can be fatal if injected improperly. But crucially, the FBI could not identify any substance in a lethal quantity that would unequivocally point to murder. The case had now turned, but the path forward was no clearer. A murder FIR was registered, a high-profile politician was under intense scrutiny, and a special investigation team was investigating. Yet, there was no confession, no clear murder weapon, and a trail of contradictory forensic evidence that seemed to lead nowhere. The question was no longer just how did she die, but who killed her, a question the SIT would struggle to answer for years to come. On May 14, 2018, more than 4 years after Sunanda died, the SIT filed its final 3,000-page charge sheet. And in a stunning reversal, it did not accuse anyone of murder. Instead, it named a single accused, Shashi Tharoor. The charges were not for killing his wife, but for driving her to death. He was charged under 2 sections of the Indian Penal Code, Section 498A for marital cruelty and Section 306 for abetment to suicide. The charge sheet painted a grim picture of Sunanda's final years, alleging that Tharoor had subjected her to, quote, mental and physical torture. The police case no longer rested on a mysterious poison or an unidentified killer, but on the accumulated weight of a toxic marriage. To build their case, the SIT relied heavily on the forensic psychological autopsy, a controversial technique where investigators analyze medical records and interview friends and family to reconstruct the deceased's state of mind. They concluded that Sunanda had suicidal ideations as a direct result of a turbulent relationship. The prosecution's key evidence included witness statements from journalists and friends who testified to the couple's vicious fights and digital communications between them. According to a report in the Times of India, one email from Sunanda to Shashi, written just 9 days before her death, became a cornerstone of their case. In it, she reportedly wrote, quote, "I don't wish to live." For the police, this was a direct link between her marital distress and her death.
I'm sorry, Aryaan, I'm not a Shashi Tharoor fanboy the way you are, but these just seem like findings of multiple confused bodies that can't seem to grasp what's happening, and they're coming up with theories. Now they're saying suicide, but suicide by what? Like,
I mean, now since the FBI report came back with alprazolam, so now they're saying it's probably the alprazolam.
But didn't the FBI also say that there's not enough of any one drug in her body?
Correct, they did say that too. So I think by this point, this investigation, and it's slightly conspiratorial, but I think it took a political turn, and that too might have played a role, that you got one of the most charismatic leaders of the opposition party. Is that something that factored in? I don't know. Many say that it does, but at this point, the suicide one doesn't make sense to me either. What does make sense, and what the police is getting right, is that it was definitely a turbulent relationship. So let's say it was suicide. Then did the turbulent marriage have a role to play in it? Yes, absolutely. Except, can you pin it directly on Shashi?
No,
right?
Of course not.
Is it abetment?
There are more layers to that question.
Exactly. And so that's what I think the investigators and now the judiciary would grapple with.
Is there at all the possibility that that initial autopsy wasn't correctly conducted? Because I find it really hard to believe that in 2014, we have not the slightest idea how this woman has died. Like nothing, no one theory is making proper sense.
Yeah, I mean, who am I to question aims in
Yeah,
their
exactly,
autopsy?
that's
The
the
problem
thing.
is that if they didn't get it right, nobody can get it right.
Sure.
So you are to assume that they did a good job, and for what it's worth, they did do a good job. I think her mode of death is not one an autopsy could reveal. It
Yeah.
is one only a toxicology or a viscera analysis. Our labs did get something wrong or something different from what the FBI labs
Right,
got. That is a
right.
fact, right? And now, which do you trust the CFSL more than the FBI? That's a decision you make.
Sure.
Shashi Tharoor's reaction was swift and scathing. He called the charge sheet preposterous and the culmination of a malicious and vindictive 4-year-long investigation. His lawyers immediately pointed out the fundamental contradiction in the police case. How could they, after 3 years of pursuing a murder theory based on medical reports suggesting homicide, now claim it was a suicide? Cause of death itself was never definitively established. How could anyone be charged with abetting it? The legal battle lines were drawn. After years of being a person of interest and a witness, Shashi Tharoor was now the sole accused, facing a potential 10-year prison sentence. The case was finally moving from the chaos of the investigation to the cold scrutiny of a courtroom. In the courtroom, it stayed there for years, languished in the slow, grinding machinery of the Indian legal system. But while the court moved at a glacial pace, the court of public opinion was in full chaotic session, presided over by the loudest voice in broadcast journalism, Arnab Goswami. In May 2017, Goswami, having just launched his new channel, Republic TV, made the Sunanda Pushkar case his flagship story. In a series of prime-time broadcasts, he unveiled what he dramatically dubbed the Sunanda tapes. These were audio recordings of conversations between a Republic TV reporter and key witnesses including Tharoor's assistant R.K. Sharma and Sunanda's friend Nalini Singh. Goswami presented them as explosive, new evidence that proved a high-level cover-up. He claimed the tape suggested that Sunanda's body had been moved and that Tharoor had returned to the hotel to tamper with evidence. I remember the Sunanda tapes as a kid watching the news with my dad, so in researching for this case, I dove in them again to see if there was any veracity in them.
ये जो सीडी दी थी वो फोटोग्राफर कहाँ से आया था जी?
मैं अपना लोकेशन क्यों बताऊं मैं कहाँ था? आप सर पता कर लीजिए.
Where were you about 1 o'clock? Where were you at about 1 o'clock on the day that Sunanda was killed?
The broadcast created a sensation, but the revelations quickly fell apart under scrutiny. The so-called tapes were not secret recordings of new information. They were simply conversations with witnesses whose detailed statements had already been part of the police record for over 3 years. Nalini Singh herself publicly confirmed that she had told the police everything that was on the tape long ago. Legal experts widely dismissed the broadcast as a media trial, pointing out that the recordings made without consent had no evidentiary value in court. The fiasco culminated in Shashi Tharoor filing a defamation suit against Goswami and the Delhi High Court repeatedly cautioning Republic TV against conducting a parallel investigation. While the media circus raged outside, the real battle was taking place inside a quiet Delhi courtroom. The prosecution argued that Tharoor's cruelty and harassment, evidenced by witness statements, and the email where Sunanda wrote, "I don't wish to live," had pushed her to the edge. Tharoor's defense, led by senior advocate Vikas Pava, relentlessly attacked the foundation of the police's case. They argued that the investigation was a masterclass in contradiction. For 3 years, the police had pursued a murder theory based on medical reports suggesting homicide. Now they were arguing for suicide. If the investigators themselves couldn't decide how Sunanda died, how could they prove that Tharoor had driven her to do it? Finally, on August 18th, 2021, 7.5 years after Sunanda Pushkar was found dead, the verdict came. The special court in Delhi acquitted Shashi Tharoor of all charges. The judge found that there was no sufficient evidence, let alone any direct evidence, of cruelty or abetment. The court noted that a person cannot be put on trial based on mere suspicion and that the prosecution had failed to prove its case beyond a reasonable doubt. Shashi Tharoor was legally a free man. But the acquittal, while closing the legal chapter, did not close the book. The central mystery remains unsolved. What really happened in the silence of Suite 345? Was it a suicide born of deep despair in a troubled marriage? Was it a tragic, accidental overdose of a woman battling illness and emotional turmoil? Or was it a cold-blooded murder, a crime so perfectly executed or so thoroughly botched in its investigation that the truth was lost forever? The case file is closed, but the questions linger. A haunting postscript to the life of a woman who was, by all accounts, extraordinary. Sunanda Pushkar, the stillborn child who fought for her first breath, the army brat who became a global businesswoman, the socialite who stormed the capital, lived a life of dazzling highs and devastating lows. In the end, her death, like her life, was a spectacle, a complex and tragic story that captivated a nation but left everyone, perhaps even those closest to her, without the final word. I'll end this episode with a note from Shiv Menon, Sunanda's son, and how he remembers his mother. What did I go through that day? I lived with the thought that I could not protect my own mother. As a single son to a single mother, there is not a big checklist, but the main thing, is to keep your mother alive and stand up for her and make sure she is happy. Losing the person who was my best friend, sister, mother, father, daughter, all at once, almost drove me insane. If it weren't for the thought of my mother being inside me, inside my heart and soul, I don't know how I would navigate my life. Her passion and energy live within me, and it's something I'm grateful for every day. Is it strange that I feel like Icarus, a man who once flew too close to the sun? Maybe that's what life felt like with her. The radiance of a burning energy, the nourishing rays of her love and compassion. She brought me to my brightest moments and eradicated all the darkness from my life. How many lifetimes would it take me to repay her all that she has given? I'm a man of few desires, just the love of my mother and her warm fire.
If you like what we do here at Desi Studios and absolutely love what we're wearing today, this is merch you can go buy all for yourself.
You can buy this Desi Crime merch in our YouTube store on the link down below at Karak Merch. Keep the engines at Desi Studios rolling so we can pay our videographer right behind the camera to make these amazing episodes just for you.